Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Sam. Welcome to my October wrap-up, and if you are not new here, I promise this is going to be so much better than September. I promise. So, October was not a bad month. We read 12 books. Did I put any of them into my spreadsheet? Absolutely not. I did not. I did put them into Goodreads, so I did track them. They are not in the spreadsheet though, so I do not have stats. But we read 12 books, which is great. I am happiest when I am reading more than 10 books a month. Under 10, I start to feel like I am not doing enough. Over 10, I'm happy. Not every month is going to be a 23 book month like June, and that's fine. As long as we're over 10, I'm good. So, I do have some really big news to share. And I also want to talk about all of these books because I read some of my favorite books of the year this month and I can't wait. But before we get into the majority of the video, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon will notify you when I post. Currently I'm posting on Sundays and Wednesdays. That could be changing soon. In a good way, we'll see. So we'll talk about the books that I read in October 1st, and then if you want to stick around for the news at the end, feel free. If you don't care, have a great day. So, books that I read in October. These are not in any particular order. Because I didn't put them on my spreadsheet, so I don't know what order I read them in. I don't remember. We will eventually put them in the spreadsheet, I promise. It's just, it was supposed to happen this morning. I was gonna put them all in at once, and then I ran out of time, so it is what it is. We also are missing a few books that I don't own a physical copy of, so I will just put them on the screen here like normal. We're gonna start off strong with one of my favorite reads of the month, and that is The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the Mistborn trilogy. And oh my goodness, guys, I really thought it couldn't get any better after the first one, but it so did. It was so good. I didn't think I was gonna like the series, not gonna lie. Someone told me that I was gonna love it, and I wasn't sure I believed her because I wasn't sure that I was into true high fantasy outside of, like, fantasy romance. Like, there's romance in here, but very little, and that's not the point of the story. Like, this is not a fantasy romance. This is a fantasy. And I wasn't sure that that was my thing. Now I want to read, like, all of them. I really can't talk about this book without giving things away from the first book, but it just expands on that first book so well. And I was reading somewhere that this is the book he originally wanted to write. Like, what happens when, like, the rebellion succeeds and the evil lord is overtaken, and then they have to rebuild the world basically from scratch. Like, what happens then? And this was just such a cool take on that and such a cool story, and I just love these characters, and I was just so attached to the whole thing, and it was so action-packed. I love Brandon Sanderson's writing. I think I thought that I wasn't a true fantasy girl because the one, like, true high fantasy that I had tried to read was Lord of the Rings, and that writing is just so flowery and so descriptive and so difficult to get through that I just didn't think that was my thing. But his writing is so straightforward in this book, and it makes it so much more enjoyable because I can enjoy the story without getting bogged down by all of the flowery writing and the singing and the just driving me nuts part of Lord of the Rings. And don't get me wrong, I love Lord of the Rings as, like, a movie. I haven't seen the TV show or whatever yet, but I love the movies. I love the story. Don't love the writing style. Do love this writing style though. Next up, we read The Righteous, which is the third book in the Beautiful series. Yeah, the Beautiful Quartet. So this is the third book. There will be a fourth book. It's not out yet. I listened to this one as an audiobook, and I both loved and hated that. So the first two books, again, this is a series, so I can't say too much without giving away the first two books, but if you've read the first two books, this book isn't so much about Sebastian and Celine. I mean, they're there, but very little. They're actually not even there until, like, halfway through the book at all. This is more about some of our side characters, and I liked that part of the story. Like, I really liked those two side characters, and I liked them together, and I liked their story a lot, but it didn't feel like the same series at all. Like, the whole first half of this book is focused on those side characters, and then Celine and Sebastian come back into the story, and then it feels like in the last 50 pages it kind of ties it together with the first book to continue on in the series. But I feel like all of the stuff that happened at the end of book 2, like, was never really addressed much. And it was just, like, I don't know, it just felt weird. It felt like a completely different series. It didn't feel, like, this doesn't feel like a paranormal romance anymore. This feels more like a fantasy romance. And I can't say why without giving things away, so I won't. But it was weird. And it's not to say that I didn't like it, because I did. I never even told y'all what I rated this one. I'm assuming you figured out this one was 5 stars. I think this one was 4 stars because I really, really liked the side character's story, like, a lot. But it was really weird the way that it tied into the rest of the story, and I didn't so much love Celine and Sebastian's part in this story, or lack thereof. And I was just confused by the end of it on, like, the overarching plot of the series. But I'm still gonna read book 4 because I am curious and I do like all these characters. So we're gonna go with that. And as far as why I was kind of on the audiobook, I liked our side characters' voices a lot. Sebastian's voice did not fit what I was picturing for him at all. And y'all know how I feel about narrators, and I struggle with narrators in general. So I knew that one was gonna be a struggle, but it's fine. Okay, next up we read a whole trilogy. So I'm just gonna kind of talk about them all at once. And I did a whole reading vlog on these, so like, y'all can check that out if you want to know all of my thoughts, because there were a lot. But I read Kingdom of the Wicked, Kingdom of the Cursed, and Kingdom of the Feared, all in the span of like a week. So that was great. This is one of my favorite fantasy romance series. It is marketed as young adult. It should not be. Y'all have heard my whole argument about young adult versus new adult versus adult versus content that should not be in young adult. Like, you've heard it all. If you haven't, check out my controversial book opinions video. But this should not be young adult. It shouldn't, and I'm kind of mad that it is. For a lot of reasons. But that being said, I absolutely loved it. I wish it was marketed properly. But I adored it, and I have seen a lot of mixed reviews on each of the books. I feel like a lot of people loved the first book, and then like half of those people hated the second book, and then like half of the people that were left hated the third book. And I don't know why, because I loved every single one, and honestly, I thought they got better each book. This was my least favorite. So there's that. But basically, this series follows Amelia, and she is a young witch living in Sicily. I think Sicily. She's living in Italy, somewhere in Italy. And her sister Vittoria her twin sister is brutally murdered, and Amelia ends up teaming up with one of the 7 princes of hell, Wrath, to like avenge her sister's death, find out who killed her sister, and then she gets caught up in this whole other plot, and it just expands from there, and it is so much fun. If you like fantasy romance, especially like the new adult level of fantasy romance, it's really good. The first book, no smut. But the second book, more smut. I'd put this one on like a 2 on my smut scale. 2, maybe. And then this one ramps it way up. This is like at least a 3.5. Probably not a 4, but like almost. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about there, I also have a video on ranking spicy romance books and how I determine those rankings, and I'll link that down below as well. Next up, we read Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. This is a kind of reimagining, retelling, modernization of And Then There Were None, and I loved it. I don't remember a whole lot about And Then There Were None, which might be why I enjoyed this book so much, because I feel like if you know And Then There Were None really well, like, you will guess this story very easily, but since I didn't remember the reveal from that one, this one worked for me. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. Basically, we have our main character, Daisy, and she and her family are all meeting up at Nana's house to celebrate Nana's 80th birthday, except her family's kind of estranged. She doesn't really talk to them. There's all of these different strange dynamics going on. I think her parents are divorced, and it's just kind of all awkward, and they're all hoping for this inheritance, and it's really weird. And then Nana's found dead, and it all explodes from there. It's super fun. I really enjoyed it. I didn't see the end coming. Can't promise that you won't, but I thought it was fun. I keep forgetting to rate these books. Kingdom of the Wicked were all 5 stars, like, for sure. This one I think was like a solid 4.5. I would even maybe call it a 5. I feel like calling it a 5 is a little bit biased because I do think the reveal was probably, at least part of it was probably pretty easy to guess if you know the story. And I didn't, so like that's the reason I didn't guess it. But like, solid 4.5. Next up, I read The Darkest Star by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Y'all know I am a big Jennifer L. Armentrout fan. I loved Blood and Ash. I adored the Luck series, and this is a continuation of the Luck series. So this follows Evie, or Evie, and she basically it's after the Lux series, after the whole alien war thing, and she goes to this nightclub and meets this guy who looks like a Luxan, but he says he's something more dangerous, and there's a lot of secrets around there. There's a lot of secrets about her family, there's a lot of secrets about herself, and all of this kind of stuff kind of like starts to come to light. I really wanted to love this book. I wanted to love this book. I loved the Lux series. But this series really felt, it just felt fanfiction-y. And that's not always a bad thing. Like, I love me some good fanfiction, but this wasn't good fanfiction. This was just fanfiction. And I felt like there were so many scenes that were just unnecessary. There were so many just like, you know when you're reading bad fanfiction and they insert like, and then I got dressed and I wore this exact shirt and this exact pants and then I brushed my hair and then I brushed my teeth, and like this laundry list of everything that they do in their day, even if it has no relevance to the story or the plot whatsoever. I just felt like there was a lot of that in this book, and it's not even a very long book. I also felt like every time she would talk to Luke, he would say he was going to tell her these secrets and he would tell her to come over so he could tell her everything, and then as soon as he would start to say something, he would get interrupted and be like, I'll tell you next time. And that happened like 5 or 6 times until I was just like, this really feels like all just filler content to make a novel size thing that should, I mean, I feel like the trilogy should have just been 1 book and she stretched it out into 3 for no reason. I read the first 1.5, which brings me to the next book that I kind of read, The Burning Shadow, which was the second book to the series. I did finish this one, and I liked this one more than the second one. I did DNF the second one. I realized that I was bored. I realized that it was slowing down my reading. I wasn't going to finish my TBR because of that book, because it was taking me so long to read it, and I let go. And then I felt so much better after I did that. So I was disappointed. I feel like first book I'd probably give a 3. Second book, I don't usually rate things that I DNF, but that one was like a 2, maybe a 1. Honestly, it's not my favorite Jennifer Armentrout. She's still one of my favorite authors, but this was not her best. Alright, next up I read These Hollow Vows, and I listened to this as an audiobook. I went in with kind of rocky expectations. So basically this was pitched as an ACOTAR inspired thing, and they're not wrong. It basically is ACOTAR meets The Selection. So we have our main character, and her sister is sold to the Fae, like the king of the Unseelie Court, and when she goes to rescue her sister, she ends up in the Seelie Court in this basically selection. It's like The Bachelor, but she's one of the like contestants to potentially marry the prince of the Seelie Court. But then there's also this dark fairy from the Unseelie Court who's like training her in the magic she didn't know she had, and she's also trying to rescue her sister. And so like you've got the Fae and the ACOTAR and the love triangle thing of the ACOTAR vibes, you've got the selection vibes, you've got a little bit of Cinderella vibes thrown in there. I went in with low expectations. My expectations were lowered even more through the first like third of the book, and then they skyrocketed through the roof through the second half, and it ended up being a 5-star read. And I'm as shocked as y'all are, because I did not expect that at all. My only complaint was, again, I listened to this as an audiobook and the narrator was just ruining it. And I truly think that's why my expectations were lowering through the first third of the first book, was it took me so long to get used to the narrator and the voices, and they just were not matching what I was picturing for those boys, and it was just ruining the experience for me. But then the plot picked up so quickly that I just, like, my head was spinning, and I immediately picked up the second one. So the next book I read was These Twisted Fates, which is the second and last book of this duology, and I was obsessed, and I listened to that whole audiobook in like 2 days, and also gave that one 5 stars. So that was a wild ride, but it was so good, and I'm not even ashamed that I liked it so much. Next up, we have Halo. This is by Alexandra Adornetto, and basically we're following Bethany, and she is an angel, like a literal angel from heaven, and she and Gabriel, the angel, and another angel named Ivy have all been sent to this tiny town in America, and basically their goal is to like combat the evil forces and like bring hope back to this town where a lot of bad things have happened. But they're not supposed to like get attached to humans or anything. They're really just there to accomplish their mission and then peace out. But Bethany meets Xavier, and suddenly her mission is kind of the last thing on her mind. But very, very, very forbidden to get involved with a human. So there's that. I listened to this one as an audiobook too, and I kind of liked the audiobook. I feel like it fit, like the narrator fit Bethany very well. And I do think it's a cute story. Like, it's cute, but that's kind of all it is. Like, it was cute. It is a series. I know there's at least 3 books. I don't think I'm going to read the rest of the series. I just don't think I care enough. It's a cute story. Like, if you like young adult paranormal romance, if you liked Unearthly or Fallen, like, it's got similar vibes. I found our main character a little young feeling. Like, she's supposed to be, I mean, she's an angel, so like she's ageless, but like she's supposed to be like 17, 18. But she kind of read like she was like 11, and that was just kind of weird. And the relationship was just like obnoxiously innocent, you know, to the point where it was just kind of almost unbelievable. And it was very insta-lovey. So that was kind of like my complaints with it. It just like, I just wasn't all that into it. Like, it was a cute story. I was interested. I did read the whole thing. Like, I was intrigued about the plot up until like the end of it. And it's not that it was nothing went downhill. Like, it was fine, but it was just fine. Like, I was like, okay, I enjoyed this, but I don't care enough to go on to the next book. But I still think if you like young adult paranormal romance that you will like this. I just think I've kind of left that age group a little bit. And I am struggling a little bit more with young adult. But I would still recommend it for young adult paranormal romance. Just maybe not if you're more into the new adult side of things now. Okay, and last. Technically, I have not finished this book, but I am so close. I have like less than 50 pages left. I'm gonna finish it today. I was so busy yesterday, and the whole weekend exploded in a way that it wasn't supposed to. So my life kind of fell apart. But I'm going to finish it today, so we're going to count it because I read like 98% of it in October. And that is Fairy Tale by Stephen King. So I picked this book up on a whim. And I didn't really know what to expect, other than I saw it was Stephen King, and I've read a couple of his books and I liked them. And then I saw that this one was like a fantasy, so I was kind of intrigued. Because like he's naturally like a horror writer, so I was like, is this going to be like a horror fantasy? Because that sounds kind of fun. Basically, the story follows our main character, Charlie Reed. And it's very difficult to explain this book because so many things happen. So Charlie has this neighbor who is kind of like a recluse. He's kind of like the local Boo Radley, you know? And he hears the dog barking. Radar is the neighbor's dog, and he hears Radar barking and somebody calling for help, and he goes in and finds that the neighbor has broken his leg. He's like an older man. And he needs an ambulance, and Charlie gets him an ambulance, and dog sits for him, and then ends up being his caretaker while he's recovering. But then, the old man ends up dying, and Charlie inherits the dog and everything else, and like this big secret about the shed out back, that's actually like a portal to another world, and that's not a secret, it's on the dust jacket. But then like the fantasy kind of explodes from there. Again, I haven't finished it, so I can't speak to the ending, but the first half of this book was like one of the greatest things I've ever read. Like, I was enjoying it so much. The second half took such a strange shift though, and it's not that I'm not enjoying it anymore, like I still am. I still really like the book, but the second half of this book feels like a different book. Like, it just doesn't feel like the same story anymore, and like, it's not bad. I'm still enjoying it. It's just so different from the first half. And I kind of miss the, like, whimsical, like, the dark but still whimsical vibes of the first half. The second half just, like, the whole dynamic and the whole tone shifts. And it's not bad. Like, I'm enjoying it. I just miss the first half, you know? But overall, I really, really anticipate this being a 5-star read. Haven't quite gotten there yet, but that's what I'm anticipating. And I will be finishing this today, for sure. Okay, so those are all of the books that I read in October. We have 11 books on the TBR for November, so one less than we had in October, so maybe we'll get some mood reading thrown in there at the end. However, that does bring me to my big news that may affect my reading this month a little bit. I hesitated on when to share this because I have upset a few people with this news. But it is good news. It is good news. It's just kind of sad news at the same time. So, my husband and I are moving again. We have been living in Charlotte with my parents for 5 months now. It'll be 6 months when we leave. And we had a lot of intentions moving here, and we both found jobs, and I found a job that I love. But if you've ever been to Charlotte, it's a really expensive area, and honestly, we weren't able to live the lifestyle that we wanted here. We weren't going to be able to buy a house here. We were struggling to come up with how we were going to even afford rent here. It is just so expensive to live here. And my husband got a new job offer back home where we met, and where I went to college. So we are moving back to Virginia, and we are very, very excited about it. It's sad, you know, we're leaving my parents, and that is sad, and they are very sad about it. And we are sorry about that. Like, we wish that we could have made it work here, but we both love Virginia. We've both missed Virginia. I have always said that if I ever got the chance to move back to Virginia, I would take it. And this is our chance. So we will be moving again in just a couple of weeks, right after Thanksgiving. So we'll see. I'm gonna be packing everything up, packing up all of this all over again. And we've got a really cute little house up there that I can't wait to show y'all. And I'm applying to a new library up there, so hopefully that works out because I really don't want to give up library jobs. I love what I do, and I can't wait to take that to Virginia with me. So there's the news. Very exciting. We're gonna get a lot of moving content again, and then y'all are gonna love this house. It is the most adorable house I've ever seen in my life. I cannot wait to show y'all. So that is all I have for today's video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!